I'm a researcher at the DHBW in Karlsruhe, Germany, the Cooperative State University Baden-Württemberg. And we, as a research group, have the pleasure to coordinate this project, EngageAll. And for the beginning, we will, just have a look at the project and to have some insights what the project is about. I try to keep it short, so as we all love project speech, so that we have more time to have a discussion. So the project, as Nick already mentioned, is about fostering student engagement and the skills you learn while doing so. And maybe let's first take a step back. And in our very dynamic world, it's there are a lot of disruptive events happening, for example, pandemics, climate change, AI. So these are very much transforming the way we are living or working or learning. So it's more than ever important to help students or people in general to deal with such uncertainty and to help them, develop skills they will need in the future. I think, for example, often referred as future skills. I think there are a lot of different terms, for example, green skills, transversal skills. But anyway, it's important to, that institutions of higher education foster these kind of skills. And so basically competence development is getting more important. We also have the Union of Skills and different approaches to do so. And in our opinion, especially student engagement and also non-formal learning context offers significant potential to foster and develop these kind of skills and to help students to, deal with uncertainty and problems or in the future, because also traditional learning formats or formatication curricula often don't manage so to help students develop these competences. So we have in general take into consideration the importance of non-formal education and also the part of volunteering, civic engagement to help students have a experience room for developing such competences. As I already mentioned, we see especially civic student engagement as very crucial for the competence development and to help students to tackle problems of the future. And that's the reason why we want to foster this kind of civic student engagement and help as well organizations to help their students recognize and take part in such volunteering. Before we give you a short overview on the project, maybe a short glimpse at what our idea of student civic engagement is. I'll just give you a short time to read a definition. You don't have to remember that or keep that in mind, but our idea of student civic engagement is basically all things that are related to volunteering. When we talk about student civic engagement, we are not only talking about service learning that is related to curriculum or student engagement regarding student councils, but to include every part of volunteering and engagement that is possible, from helping elderly people once a week to don't know, saving kittens, whatever. So basically every idea of student civic engagement, and in our idea it's a very crucial element in the development of civic responsibility and democratic values, human rights, respect, and social inclusion. So that is basically the foundation of the project. And what is it about? Well, as I already said, I will keep it short because we all love the project details. It's a project that is that started in September 2024, It's a project that will last 32 months and aims to address several critical needs within professional higher education by recognizing the limitations of focusing solely on formal education for the competence development, and we'll have a look at the future skills, transferable skills, competences a student can enhance while engaging in volunteering and community work, but also to encourage them to do so. So we not only have a look what they will learn in these non-formal contexts, but also we will develop tools to support higher education institutions and learner to do so. So on one hand, we are helping policymakers and institutions, but also have a huge focus on the students and what they can learn by volunteering and engagement. We have a consortium of 8 fantastic partners. We are from the DHBW in Germany. You already know Nick. He introduced himself. He's from the Knowledge Innovation Center based in Slovenia and Malta. One partner is the Mondragon University from the Basque Country. Then we have Urashi and SU as supranational national organizations that are also working in the project. We have UCLL from Leuven-Limburg and the Institute for the Development of Education based in Croatia, and another university with MCAST from Malta. Very diverse consortium with a lot of experience. And yeah, it's not the first time that we are meeting in this project, because this exactly the same consortium with a lot of same people already worked on another project before. That was also some kind of foundation for the EngageAll project. And the project we are building on, so to speak, is the inclusive project. And there we aimed at making professional higher education more inclusive and student engagement more open to all students. And we already developed different resources, for example, of course, some reports, it's an EU project, but also guidelines, self-assessment tools, training courses, and policy papers. So we have a good foundation of our work and also materials we can build on. Project outcomes I already mentioned. View, one hand, a competence framework for student engagement and civic participation. Then a training manual for a student ambassador program aimed at supporting and inspiring young people from disadvantaged backgrounds. So we're also aiming schools and people that are not naturally involved much in volunteering, but and to encourage them to get engaged and show them what is important and why is it important to engage and volunteer. And of course, a course handbook on support and supporting resources for a student engagement course aimed at students. That I'll keep very short. The work packages just as an overview. Because I won't get too much in detail to it. We have for work package, of course, we want to develop a competence framework and some toolkits for this kind of student engagement. And then a huge part of our project is the student ambassador scheme to connect students from diverse backgrounds with young people from underrepresented backgrounds in the community. So help them engaging. We also want to have a student engagement course. Learning for active inclusive engagement. And of course, one part is the whole peer learning and knowledge exchange. So we already can hint that in total there will be 5 webinars. The first one today more open and tackling the topic of student engagement more in a general way. And then the next webinars are more focused on different work packages. Where are we now? So basically, the first half year of the project, we are currently developing an ambassador scheme. We are currently finalizing the framework for civic student engagement. We currently conducted focus groups with students and subject matter experts. It's also one part of our idea that we want deeply the students involved in all steps we are taking, because we want to create something for students. So we have to involve students in every part of the project, work package, whatever tasks. So that we are currently we are analyzing these focus groups and experts on civic engagement. We are developing currently the toolkit, and of course have some content analysis of the things all the people say during the workshops. So maybe at the end some insights into things we've done in the last 3 workshops. We had a workshop with different people from all kind of volunteering places, volunteering organizations, and we try to work with personas, and had a lot of workshops where we actively try to implement all the ideas from stakeholders, students. For example, as you can see, we try to tackle it from very different ways. And so we will probably have more workshops in the future. So if you want to get involved, you can always contact us, and then we can work together on that in the future. Some maybe at the end, some insights. I also not won't get too much into detail, but as I already mentioned, we had some interviews with students, and that very much emphasized the importance of the project, because a lot of students said they love volunteering, they learn a lot of competences, but they often lack support and acknowledgement from the institutions, from their workplace. So that was very good to hear. But for the project, that there is an opportunity to change something. And for example, there were a lot of students that said they learned during their volunteering work competences or skills they would otherwise learn in their companies or in their work maybe in 5 years. So although there is a lot of things also everyone has from student engagement, there isn't not so much support, or often not so much support in fostering student engagement, or giving students the experience and the space for volunteering and getting engaged. At this point, I would hand over back to Jeanne, probably.
Yes, thank you, Jan, for this presentation. And nice to meet you, everyone. So my name is Jeanne, and I worked as a project officer at the European Students' Union. So as my colleague said, and as we also wrote in the invitation and in the presentation for this webinar, the goal is to present the project, so to talk about EngageAll, what we already did and what we are planning to do in the upcoming months and years. But I mean, the idea of this peer learning webinar is also really to engage with the audience, so to talk with students, with higher education institution staff. So really to have a discussion about the topics about students' civic engagement, and to try, all together to find solutions and ideas to promote and enhance, I would say so, student civic engagement. And in order to do that, we decided to have this panel discussion with 5 inspiring actors from the higher education sector. And I'm going to introduce them shortly, but for the audience maybe, to just give you an idea of what we will do. We will have like for 40 minutes, I would say, something like that, a panel discussion. So we prepared the questions. and the panelists will answer to them. And after that, you will have the possibility also to engage, to ask questions. And also under my row, you will have the possibility to give your opinion, to share some ideas or some thoughts about the subject. So we really want, to engage all of you in this. It won't be only me asking questions, so just to be clear about it. But yes, to start, I'm going briefly to introduce our four panelists. So first, we have Carrie Gardelin. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. You will have the possibility to say it after that. But Carrie has been responsible for the EU Youth Dialogue in the European Commission in DG EAC since 2023. And you have mostly a background in youth education and culture. We have also Gabriela Civico, so the director of the Center for European Volunteering. Actually, we are kind of neighbors because our offices are in front of each other in Brussels. And Gabriela has been working for CEV since 2010. We have also John Edwards, so the Secretary General of Eurasia. As Johan said, Eurasia is also a partner in the EngageAll project. And John also worked for the European Commission's John Research Center between 2011 and 2020. And finally, we have Arno Schroyen, so who's the Vice President of the European Students' Union. And yes, Arno was re-elected some days ago during our board meeting. So maybe to start this panel discussion, I will ask you the same questions to all panelists. So maybe we can start with Kari, John, Gabriela, and then Arno, if it's fine for you. The first question I wanted to ask you, because in the presentation, Jan said that we tried, to define what student engagement means to us. And we also want your point of view on the subject. So that's why our first question is, what does authentic student engagement look like from your perspective? And yeah, how do you define it? So yeah, maybe we can do Kari, John, Gabriela, and Arno. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And thank you for giving me the word. So what does student engagement mean? What is the definition? Well, for us inside the Commission, we talk about giving young people, or students in this case, a real chance to influence policy and influence political decisions that shape their future. So for me, that would be the definition here. Of course, when you talk about student participation and student engagement specifically, you can choose to think about their future as just being within the education system, but also in a broader sense. I do think it is important to engage students also beyond the education system and giving them an opportunity to have an influence also on society and political decisions. So that for me would be the very definition. And for this to be meaningful, which is another term that we use a lot inside the European Commission, I think there are two aspects that are key. One is that this process has to be youth-led. You can't talk about meaningful youth engagement if the young people themselves don't have a say on what the discussion should focus on and what kind of feedback they want. So young people really need to have a key role in this engagement process. The second aspect that I would like to highlight would be the impact. This shouldn't just be a talk shop. This shouldn't just be about young people sitting down, talking about what they would like to see and what they would like to happen, but there should actually be a real link to policy outcomes. There should be a real effect of what they're saying. So those two things for me would be the key aspects of it, really, that it's youth-led and that it has an impact.
Thank you, Marjan.
One second, please. Yeah, sorry about that. I just had some disruption. So yeah, thank you for letting me know, letting me speak to you, because we're delighted to be in this this project, precisely because it is about student engagement in higher education, but I think it's more specifically about student engagement in what we call professional higher education. And that's you actually represents higher education institutions that are focused on what we would say the world of work, but I think we can put that in a broader context, not just because the world of work is very diverse, not just in, let's say, classic employment, but also in a broad area, formal and informal civil society. And I think this is really what distinguishes professional higher education from other forms of higher education. And so what I'd say is there's two aspects to this question. One is the student engagement in their say institutions, and I said I represent higher education institutions, and there, of course, we have the traditional structures of student councils. They tend to be sometimes seen very much sort of certainly from student union's perspective of fighting for the rights of students, which is correct. But I think how we'd see it more is about them influencing their own learning pathways, and really being involved in the design of their own programs. And then secondly, it's the external, all the area external to the institution, which, like I just said, is really something that we work a lot on in the applied sciences, and whether it's internships, whether it's dual higher education, whether it's a practical project in the courses, we would see that be engaged with the community is something that engages students as well, and that it makes them it increases their ability to then have a positive impact in society following the formal completion of their studies. So yeah, those two things, internal and external to the institution, but of course meaningful, as Akari mentioned, meaningful, especially when it comes to influencing what happens in the university. It's not a tick box exercise involving the students. I think that sometimes can be the case. It really is taking their views into account, not just into the advisory perspective, but also in decision making, and decision making on how they think the courses should be designed, delivered, and evaluated. So those meaningful student engagement within and outside the institution, that's how we'd see it.
Thank you. I think, Gabriela, it's your turn.
Thank you. So the big challenge to say something new. I think so many things have been already mentioned, but yes, as Jean mentioned in the beginning, I'm from the Center for European Volunteering, which is a European network of over 60 national and regional volunteer centers. So we deal with all kinds of volunteering for people of all ages. So I will approach the answer to this question from the perspective of volunteering, because when I hear civic engagement, yes, of course, it's about policy change and activism and the things that we've already heard about. But for us, it's also very much about volunteering and having the space to volunteer. So for us, civic engagement is really about having the freedom and the choice to volunteer, knowing where the opportunities are, being able to act in solidarity with people and the planet that they see around them, the students. And this should be, based on their own free will and based on their own choice. So this is what, for me, would make civic engagement of students authentic, is that it's based on their own choice. It's based on the needs they see around them. It's based on their own passions and interest and sense of justice and the groups and rights that they want to defend, and how they can put that into actions through voluntary effort, based on solidarity with the people they see around them, maybe for their own student community, but maybe also for other elements in the community, maybe also combating climate change and more bigger picture issues regarding protecting our planet, the SDGs, etc. So we would really see authenticity of civic engagement stemming from that, stemming from students having the freedom, having the knowledge, having the capacity to self-organize, and to take action in solidarity with those needs that they see around them.
Thank you. And last but not least, Arno.
Yeah, same. It's going to be a bit difficult to say something new. I think a lot has been said already. I think, joining what the other panelists said, I think when it comes to authentic, it's indeed having it, giving the means to students to be involved fully in as much as they would like to be, giving them the capacity, giving them the information, and even for some parts of engagement, giving them the training that they would need to be able to be engaged and to be fully aware of what it means. I think when it comes to civic engagement and how we can define it, I think it can be defined a lot. I quite join what John said earlier, that there is, when it comes to students, there is indeed the engagement in policy, in advocacy, and in real, like, let's say, representation of students as a group. But then there is also everything on the side, which is, as also it was presented earlier, just being a volunteer in a retirement home, or being active in your locality and trying to make a change. So I think it's, in the end, civic engagement is about trying to make a change on different levels, either very locally in your community, but also further on national or even European level. But also, I think civic engagement is also something that brings you something as a person. It brings you competences, it brings you knowledge, and also a better understanding on society and what's going on.
Okay, so many thanks to the four of you for your definitions, and this first sneak peek into the topic. It was really interesting to hear from you. And now we will move on to the second part of the panel discussion, with the targeted questions we prepare for all of you. I will start again with Carrie, but then on the next round we will change, no worries. Yes, Carrie, I would like to know how is the European Commission supporting student civic engagement through the European Youth Dialogue and related initiative. Since you are responsible for the Youth Dialogue at the European Commission, we think it can be very interesting to hear from you about that.
Thank you very much, and thank you again for the opportunity to go first, which is always much easier. So I started working on youth participation approximately 1.5 years ago inside the Commission. And in many ways, I was very fortunate to start at that time, at that moment, because there's so much happening on youth engagement at the moment inside the European Commission. First of all, we had the European Year of Youth 2022, where one of the main outcomes was that we should strengthen youth engagement all across Europe. And it's one of my jobs, one of my most important parts of my job, to do that. Then next happening was, of course, the start of the second mandate of Ursula von der Leyen's Commission. And in her speech, when she set out her ambition for what she wanted to do over the next couple of years, she really highlighted that we have to strengthen youth engagement. And we really have to give young people a much better opportunity to shape their future and shape the policies that have an impact on them. And she proposes to do that in several different ways. I'll get to the EU Youth Dialogue in a second, but there are also several new initiatives that she's launching. One is that she is creating a youth advisory board specifically to give her advice. And this will be made up of young representatives from all over the EU that will meet her once or twice per year and give input on policy, which is entirely new. This has not existed before. But also she is proposing that every single commissioner, and this is important, so not just the commissioner who works on youth issues, but everybody else as well, will meet every year a group of young people to discuss their policy issues. And this, again, the scale of it is entirely new. And the fact that it's now a matter of routine, this will happen every single year for the next couple of years, is really exciting. In the past, there's been a tendency that young people should talk about youth policy. But now it's much, much broader. Young people are also given an opportunity to talk about other policy areas. Like some of the other panelists mentioned, important topics like climate change or energy or trade or security or democracy, but not just youth policy, because young people are not just concerned about youth issues. They're actually concerned about all policy issues. So that's a major challenge and a new development. But in parallel with these new initiatives, we are also working to strengthen the EU Youth Dialogue. So the EU Youth Dialogue is the largest consultation mechanisms all over Europe when it comes to asking young people and giving young people an opportunity to focus, to give their views on policies and political decisions that concern them. Now, the dialogue has been around for nearly 15 years, and several hundreds of thousands of young people have been consulted during that period. So it's also one of the oldest consultation mechanisms we have at the European level. But having said that, the dialogue has developed a lot in the past 15 years and is now again going through a phase of rapid development. There is a lot happening at the moment to try and strengthen the dialogue. And we're talking about some of the things that I mentioned earlier, making sure that it is youth-led, of course. We're also working a lot to try and strengthen the diversity and the inclusion of the dialogue. A few years ago, we didn't even measure diversity data, whereas we now started doing that quite recently. So now, for the first time, we can actually keep track about which groups are underrepresented, which groups cannot make their voices heard. That's also new. But above all, we are looking into ways to strengthen the impact of the dialogue. As everybody who works on youth engagement will know, this is one of the hardest parts when you work on youth engagement. How do you make sure that there is an impact, that there is a real result, how you make sure that there is a change in society? So that is something we are looking at doing in lots of different ways at the moment. We have researchers associated with the dialogue to try and make sure that it's evidence-based, and they are also tasked to keep track of the impact and monitor the impact, both at the national level and at the European level. We are working on how we phrase the questions, because how you phrase the question will have an impact on the recommendations you get. And we found that a lot of the time, the recommendations we got were so vague that it's very, very difficult to implement them or even to show that you have implemented them. If you get recommendations like, we should stop climate change, it's very, very hard to say that, look, this is what we did as a response to that. So the question in itself has to be much more focused and much more specific. Another thing we're trying to do to strengthen the impact of the dialogue is to partially, not fully, but partially, connect the dialogue to the ongoing policy agenda of the European Commission. So what does that mean? I know that's quite technical and jargon, but what we're trying to do specifically is to make sure that the consultation will partly focus on an ongoing policy topic of the Commission. So it's an area we try to shape the dialogue so that we will get feedback that is relevant for something we're working on at the moment. And again, we're hoping that this will really change the way we can use the data from the dialogue. Because sometimes in the past, we've had really good data and really good recommendations, but maybe that has been given to us 2 years after we've launched a new strategy or launched a new initiative. Whereas now we're hoping we will get data before, when we're in the creation phase of new initiatives. So that's a couple of things. I mean, I could go on here, but I know there are several people who have interesting things to share. So I'll pause there, and hopefully we'll get a chance to develop this further later on, unless you have a question, of course.
Yes, for sure, Gary. We'll have time after that. Now let's move on to the other questions. And my question is for John, actually. And since you're representing applied sciences universities here in Eurasia, I would like to know, how do professional higher education institutions foster civic engagement among the students? So if you have some insights about this topic.
Yes, I mean, I mentioned a few before, that in terms of things like dual higher education, internships, the practical based learning through examples from society. I think they foster it also by assessing that as a part of an assessment, and not just as a sort of as an add-on to the rest of their studies, which I think is an important point to make. It's not, you know, community engagement. It's not something that comes after you've done the rest of your sort of more important, let's say, part of your studies, but it's actually integrated into the main activities of the institutions. It can be linked to all types of learning, and it may appear that civic engagement perhaps is linked to some courses more than others. As we can think of, you know, some of the health and care subjects, or let's say democratic institutions, engaging with democratic institutions, if it's or sociology, let's say, for example. But you know, it can be actually integrated through different subjects, which, you know, if you don't put into practice, if you don't see let's say the use of what you're studying, then it's actually very theoretical, and that's not the type of courses that are offered by the applied science universities. So it's part of the formal curricula. Of course, there is other, you know, volunteering initiatives that could apply for all types of universities. I myself did that while studying in a more traditional theoretical, let's say, program. But that sort of extracurricular is not the main thing. It's actually integrated into the courses that students enroll on.
Thank you. And now, Gabriela, it's your turn. My other question for you, Gabriela, is what role does volunteering play in fostering student civic identity and engagement?
Yes, well, hopefully a huge one. But the difficulty we have is how many students really have access to high quality volunteering opportunities. In particular, mobile students studying in a country that's not their own find it quite difficult to access good quality volunteering opportunities which are suitable for their availability, for their skills, for their interests, for their passions. So this is something that we work with our members, we work with volunteer involving organizations on the ground to try to see how they can adapt what they offer in terms of volunteering possibilities to also be able to attract and engage this international group of students. But of course, even locally, students, we hope that they will have access to volunteering. Perhaps some courses, service learning courses. I don't know if you are familiar with this concept, but service learning is part of the curriculum. I think John was just alluding also to something similar, where students can choose to take a course or part of a course which involves civic engagement, involves service learning. We don't use the word volunteering in that context, because as soon as it's part of the formal education, it stops becoming voluntary. It starts to become something that's obligatory. But nevertheless, this obligatory element of civic education, of learning in the community, of cross-sector collaboration, which is essential for this kind of civic engagement in the community, can be a path to future lifelong volunteering engagement, volunteering opportunities, civic engagement, etc. Identity is a loaded term. We were even at the beginning of this webinar, asking where are people from. This becomes, as time goes on, a more and more challenging question for many of us. But volunteering is, I think it's quite unique in spaces in which we find ourselves in our lives, where in volunteering contexts, we tend to find people of all kinds of identities. When we are studying, or when we are in work, or with our family, we tend to be with people who are very similar to ourselves, probably with shared identities, with shared understandings of the world. In volunteering contexts, we find a much broader cross-section of the population. So having this broader cross-section, having this greater diversity in the volunteering context can really help young people to explore their own identity and to understand better the identities of others. So this diversity that we find quite uniquely, I think, in volunteering really can help students with finding the way that they want to engage, finding the way that they feel most impactful. Carrie spoke before about the importance of impact, and of course this is very important. But of course, organizations that are offering these volunteering opportunities to young people, to students, have to also think about how they measure impact, how they communicate that impact to the students. Time is changing, not only with digital opportunities, but also in terms of attitudes to volunteering, to civic engagement. We see now that younger people, young generations, expect everything practically to be more immediate. And that's also the same for impact from volunteering. They expect to be very quickly able to see what's the impact of the civic engagement, what change are they making, what change have they made. So organizations also need to adapt to make sure that particularly students can see the impact that they've made on the community. One thing that we stress a lot about volunteering in the context of students and universities, it's happening less and less, but maybe within the SO network you still see it. We hope we don't see it so much, where students are getting credits for hours that they volunteer. This for us really negates the point of volunteering, negates the point of volunteering as a valuable form of civic engagement, because it turns the volunteer time, the volunteer hours, into a more or less simple commodity that you exchange for credits. So you take away the sense of solidarity, you take away the sense of commitment, you take away the sense of personal passion and engagement with the topic. So when we look at good quality civic engagement, good quality student volunteering, we look at really focusing, if you need to focus on credits or some kind of recognition, that we focus on credits and recognition for the learning outcomes that have happened through that volunteering, not simply on the time dedicated. So we see some very good examples across Europe where learning outcomes are the focus, and students can exchange those learning outcomes for credits. But we also see some quite poor examples where it's simply the time, the hours looked at, and very often these hours can have very little meaning, they can have very little impact, and they turn into a simple exchange for credits idea, which takes away a lot of the meaning and a lot of the value that volunteering has in terms of exploring one's own personal identity, exploring one's own self-worth. And I'll just finish to say that volunteering is one of the few. Children and young people, they have more and more pressure to succeed, to perform. We see it in the trends around really fewer and fewer, at least diverse groups of young people, are finding the time to do longer term European Solidarity Corps projects, for example, because the pressure is there to kind of keep going, do your career, get your master's, have all of these qualifications, all of this really, high level performance pressure. And volunteering is the one place where we are not doing something for us, we're doing something for others, we're doing something in solidarity with society, we are defending the rights of others rather than doing something for our own self-interest. And this is very valuable for students to have that space, to have that time, to have that opportunity, not to have to focus on their own perfect performance and excellence of studies, but they can actually take a breath, think about others, think about the world, think about society, and do something proactively. So this is one of the things that we want to protect in how we foster the civic engagement, making sure that it's really about the solidarity and about the society, and not just another tick box or another hoop that the students have to do in order to prove that they are successful, for example.
Thank you, Gabriela. And also just to let you know that part of the project, we are also creating a service learning toolkit. So that will be created in the upcoming months. And now, Arno, it's your turn, finally. And from a student perspective, I would like to know, how do you see the current state of student civic engagement, and especially in professional higher education institutions?
Yeah, I mean, on this, I think I will focus more my answer on student representation as part of the civic engagement. What we see is that there are more and more attacks against student participation across Europe, especially now in the last years with the rise of more conservative views in different countries and more conservative parties winning the elections. We see more and more attacks on student representation, on civic, on social dialogue, on student inclusion into processes, and we see it either very openly and very bluntly attacks towards like a national student union or local student union directly, or more discreetly through reducing funding or refusing the access to some spaces. So I think it's again we managed in the last year to bring the student perspective to a front and have it really be taken into account, and we need to manage to maintain that. And it's not always easy when you have in front of you people that really don't want to talk to you. So it's about finding your allies and who you can still discuss. And I mean, I think student representation has still a future in front of them, but not maybe as structural and has a, let's say, as a direct contact that it has maybe been in the past, but more as a strong voice going against what is going on. I mean, we can see it, for example, in Serbia. It's a great example of what the students have been doing, but also in Georgia, students have been very active towards against the state reforms. We have also a great example of our member from Belarus, where half of the members are in exile because they're persecuted in their home country. And I think it's also a very strong proof that student engagement and student participation will be at the forefront of change also still in the future, and that even if official spaces are shrinking, even if we're not getting our word at the table maybe as strongly as it was beforehand, we will still be there and give our opinion, even though if it's differently.
Thank you. And now we will continue to one of the last round of this panel discussion, and that's also why I will ask you all to be short in your answer. because we have still 1 hour, but also the idea is really to engage with the audience and to listen from them. So I will actually start with you again, Arnaud. And I want to know, I mean, you talked about and you mentioned like that students are under threat and that it's also related to student engagement. So I would like to know, how can Students' Union at the European, national or local level empower students to become more civically active, and how they can protect that on that matter?
I think there is part of what student unions can do is on a policy level and on an advocacy level directly to other to policymakers or to teachers, academic staff, and things and other groups of people. It's about advocating for the means to be able to engage through either. I mean, currently there is a huge financial burden on students. It's becoming more and more difficult to study and to afford studying. And I think that there needs, if we want people to be able to engage and to get into civic engagement, they need to have the time, they need to have the possibility to engage. And if you have to work 2 jobs or even a job to be able to pay for your studies, then you don't have the time to be engaged. I think also it's part of it is also changing the mentality of academic staff. What I've seen quite a few times when I was a student representative on a local level, but also on a national level, where teachers openly attacking student unions and what they were doing, and how if students get engaged, it will have consequences. So I think it's also about changing mentality on what it is to be engaged and what it can bring, and actually encouraging also teachers to support this engagement. And when it comes to student unions directly to their contact with students, what worked very well for me when I was a local student representative was it's always starting from the issues that they are facing, the problems that they have, and how you can find solutions to those problems with them, and then getting them engaged through that. I think it's always easier to get people engaged when you can connect it to something that they've been living, to their own personal experience. So I think in the end it's about that, how as students we can also engage other students.
Thank you, Arnaud. And now we'll move on to Gabriela. In the first question, I mean, the second question, you mentioned that for you, volunteering can be part of the curriculum, because I mean, it won't be volunteering in that case, it will be kind of mandatory. So I would like to know, in this situation, how can we better integrate volunteering opportunities into the student experience across Europe?
Hi. Yes, so real genuine volunteering, which is you know, community engagement based on free will, requires first of all the the understanding of the institution. Sometimes students may need some flexibility in their attendance at lessons, or their you know, other kind of academic commitments which would allow them to volunteer. So we believe that some kind of flexibility should be offered, particularly when that volunteering involves going abroad to another country, maybe means that they are away from their place of study. So everything should be looked at with caution, of course, but within the possibilities, much more flexibility needs to be offered within courses, to make sure that students can be supported in their volunteering, and that their volunteering is seen as a positive while they deliver for their course requirements, of course, but that volunteering is seen as a positive complementary activity alongside studying, alongside maybe work to earn some money, but that volunteering is also a valuable experience for students to have while they are while they're volunteering. You mentioned service learning, Jan, which is great. So I look forward to seeing those materials. I think they will be focused on higher education students. We recently finished one project on service learning for secondary school students. So that's an Erasmus Plus project, and all those materials are available for secondary school students, focusing on how service learning can prevent early dropout from secondary school. But when we did that project, and I think this is the case also for student service learning, for student volunteering, we realized that even at secondary school level, it's rather too late. And that young people need to understand civil society, understand civic engagement, understand how cross-sector collaboration in communities work in terms of meeting local needs. And we are currently doing a project called SLIPS, Service Learning in Primary Education. And I think if we really want to boost volunteering for people when they are at student age, we need to introduce them as early as possible in their lives to civil society, to civic action, to civic engagement. I count myself as very lucky that I grew up in a family and in a school, in primary and secondary school, where volunteering was very normal, civic engagement was very normal, and it was part of life. But not all children and young people have that possibility. And if we don't take the formal education system where not all, but most children and young people are located, if we can introduce them to service learning programs as young as possible, even from the age of 5-6 years old, that's the project that we are looking at now, then there's a much higher chance that when those young people become students, that they are really understanding volunteering, that they're motivated to volunteer, that they know where to volunteer, they know how to create the space in their own lives for volunteering in an enriching manner. So I think, yes, there are things we can do once people are students, but there are many, many things that we can do before those children grow into young people that are students, to make sure that they understand and appreciate how volunteering can be an enriching part of their lives, and is not something that is taking advantage or is a waste of time or doesn't have any impact. I think we have to really show people through lived experiences that this can really be something that can be for them, that volunteering is actually for everyone.
Thank you, Gabriela. And now coming back to John and to applied sciences point of view, if I may say so, we would like to know if you are familiar with kind of partnerships between professional higher education institutions and local communities, I mean, in the way to enhance students' sense of civic responsibility. And if yes, how can these partnerships can be integrated into extracurricular activities or into curricula? I hope my question is clear.
Kind of, John, but I'll let's say change it to how I think I could reply on this, because I mean I haven't got a long list of examples of higher education institutions and local partnerships for student engagement. I think maybe that's one of the reasons we have this project. But I think I would just like to welcome your point, let's say, on the local dimension, that perhaps I should also mention in the definition of civic engagement, because come to think of it, this is something which is actually really important. I mean, the definition of civic is, in fact, relating to one's city, town, or local area. That's what civic means. So shouldn't get confused with civil society. I think civic is specifically about, let's say, society in a specific geographical community. And I think this is where the partnerships with local authorities are really important, because sometimes we see higher education as detached from society, detached from the places where higher education institutions are located, that there is almost a conflict between local residents and the universities. And I think the way we can resolve some of this democratic problems and also that Anna was referring to is to show the value of students participating in local initiatives. That way we can, it can be for the students themselves, but also for the rest of the community to learn from the students and create, let's say, a more harmonious relationship between higher education and the rest of society. And so, you know, whether it's, you know, I said personally, I would concentrate mostly on the formal part of the education. I know we have the volunteering perspective as well here, but you know, formally speaking, there's lots of examples where education can benefit the local community. You know, whether it's on specific projects, I don't know whether it's related to, you know, traffic management or you know, social innovation to create you know, I don't know, childcare for in the local community. There were lots of examples where students can really bring innovative ideas to the city, the town where they're studying. So I would just, let's say, not rather give you examples because I hope this project will do that. I just wanted to underline that local perspective of student engagement that we shouldn't forget, even when higher education sometimes seems to be a global industry. It is located in specific places, and the hope project addresses that.
Thank you. Many thanks for this answer. And now back to Gabriela. In the context of the Union of Skills, Future of Skills, and since skills, again, it's a huge priority at the moment at the EU level, we would like to know how does student civic engagement relate to much needed future of skills? Kari, you can.
Right.
Thank you.
Kari or me?
Sorry, I sorry, Kari. Yes.
Oh, sorry. I thought the question was for Gabriela. So
yes, sorry about that. I think I said Gabriela, but no, it's for you, Kari.
okay. Could you just repeat the question briefly?
Yes, sure. How does student civic engagement relate to much needed future skills?
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. I recently asked a similar question to a young Bulgarian man who had participated in one of our consultations. And he wrote back to me saying that he'd found participating in the EU Youth Dialogue to be quite frustrating. It was very complex. It was difficult to see the outcomes. It was difficult to see that it had an impact at all. And it really, because political processes were so complicated, he felt very unsure about what had actually been the result. And then he said, and at this point I was quite shocked and depressed that it was so negative. And then he wrote, and in the end, this was an excellent preparation for life. And I learned so much about life because life is complex. Democracy is complex. Politics is complex. And by participating in the dialogue, I understood the complexities of life. And I thought that was a really beautiful way to look at it, because it is true that it can be quite frustrating. But on a more positive note, I hope that participants would also learn and try and understand some of those complex political processes. It's certainly something we emphasize from our side, that those who participate in the dialogue also need to be taught and be given explanations about the different political levels so that they can understand a little bit more about why is a decision being taken in Brussels? Why is a decision being taken by the local government? Because there's always a reason for that. And understanding that and understanding the difference is really one of the keys to understanding democracy. So for me, that would be the main thing I hope that young people would learn, to get a better understanding of democracy. But of course, there are lots of other benefits too, in terms of communication, team building, team working, understanding others' points of views and rhetorics and all of that. But to me, that first example about how being a part of this complex process taught them something about life and how complex life is really summed it up in a really nicely way.
Thank you, Kari. And now I think we can do one last questions. It will be the same question for all of you, and I will kindly ask you to go, straight to the point. So maybe 30 seconds, 1 minute. The question is, if you could choose one actionable step to boost inclusive civic engagement, what would it be? So yes, I would appreciate if the question can be short, and then we can move on to the Miro and open the floor to the audience. So maybe, John, you can start.
Okay, very quickly then I would just say maybe we could put it into the internal quality assurance of the institution, of its programs, to actually give it a formal basis for assessment, to make it not something which is just a nice to have, but really a core part, certainly of professional higher education institutions.
Thank you.
That's
Gabriela? And now it's really you. So.
So the question was about inclusivity, right?
Yeah, one actionable step to boost it.
Yeah, to boost the inclusion. I think we need to start early. Like I said before, really sorry to repeat, but I think if we're only focusing on reaching people at higher education level, it's for many people it's a bit too late. We need to make sure that as young as possible, people have the critical thinking skills, the media literacy skills, so that they are able and capable to make their own civic engagement choices, which could be at the local level, regional, national, international, wherever they feel most appropriate to put their civic energies. But I think we need to be sure that young people have this, media literacy, critical thinking, problem solving skills that people need to be able to then find their way, not only academically, but also as citizens and members of society.
Thank you. Arnaud, if you want to add something.
Yeah, I think, I'm also repeating myself. I think it's giving the means and giving the time for students to be engaged. So giving the time, reducing financial barriers is a step that could increase inclusivity.
Thank you. Anna Kari, it's your turn.
Thank you. I think I would echo what Gabriela was saying before about taking it outside the formal education system, because by limiting ourselves to formal education or to higher education, we are excluding so many people who will not be given an opportunity to make their voice heard. I have seen some really nice examples of this from consultations at a national level as part of the EU Dialogue. In Belgium, for example, there have been consultations carried out amongst youth populations in prisons. In Luxembourg, there have been consultations carried out in foster care homes. There are beautiful examples from the Czech Republic, for example, where they work with youth organizations to really reach out to young people with fewer opportunities. And I would like to see more efforts like that and more innovation in that respect, to really make sure that we don't just represent those who are already inside the formal education system.
Thank you, Kari, and thanks to all of you. I think now we can go all to the Miro. I know that Nick will also share his screen so that we all are able to see it properly. And the idea, it's really to engage with all of you that are attending this webinar. And if you have some thoughts, ideas about the subject, so it's really like a kind of a reflection moment. And if you can, for example, indicate the challenges you faced or you heard regarding inclusive student engagement and participation, if you wish also to suggest ways of improvement, or like if you know, concrete example of good practices in your countries, feel free to share it and to indicate it on the Miro.
Shall I? Thank you. Let me just, I think everybody can see the screen. I see that not everybody's in the Miro board, but hopefully everybody can. So as you saw, we were before in the map. If you go below, you can see the next board if you haven't seen it yet. So we want to see what are, as Jan said, we want to see what are the obstacles to inclusive student civic engagement, and we want to see if you have any ideas on how you can make it better, how we can improve it, and especially make it more inclusive for more groups of students and young people as well. And if you have any ideas about good practices that you know of, that would also be very useful. And just to show again. So there's post-it notes. You can zoom in, of course, when you go to the different ones. There's post-it notes that you can just grab. You take a sticky note, and then you can basically just start writing. So, for example, as an obstacle, you can think about students lack time. And you can go to the next one. As an ID, you might say, so how can we improve inclusive student engagement? Well, say integrate in the curriculum, as we also already heard before. And again, if you have any good examples, any examples that you know, anything concrete or less concrete, please also share that with us. So yeah, so for example, service learning at some universities. We very much just like to hear your ideas. We want to know, what do you see as what are the main challenges that you know of, ideas for improvement, and indeed good practices. And then we will also ask the panel to reflect on that later on. Also, if you have any more questions for the panel or for anyone else, please keep them going in the chat or in the Q&A, and then we will also try to address them later. And we'll also start the button. We take 15 minutes for this maximum, and then we have still enough time for the questions and answers. So please go ahead and put your IDs on the board.
I think we can all agree that for now, we see mainly obstacles such as political apathy and distrust. Also, we talked about the time during the panel discussion. So we see time constraints and priorities. Many people are simply not aware of the opportunities available for civic participation or lack sufficient information about how to get involved. That's also something we talked about related to the project. So, and more coming. So many thanks for your engagement and for reacting in the Miro. Okay, you still have some time to put your comments, but for now we clearly see more obstacles than solutions, but we'll give you a bit more time and then we will continue and I will ask our 4 panelists also to react and to pick one or two notes and to reflect on it. So now we will continue and I will ask, yes, John, Arnaud, Carrie, and Gabriela to comment a bit on the Miro. I mean, I don't know, you can proceed the way you want. I mean, you can choose like a topic, for instance, you can have a look to obstacles or good practices or ideas. You can, I mean, if you see run relevant notes or messages that particularly resonate in you, feel free to do it. But first, many thanks to everyone because now we have some good practices and ideas. So that's great because we are not only focusing on the obstacles, but we are also looking for all together for solutions. So we really appreciate it. So I don't know who wants to have the pleasure to start. I know Miro can be a bit, I don't know, maybe it's not familiar to you, but yeah, if you are, I don't know, if you see a particular messages topic that you want to about what you want to say something or that you wish to comment, feel free to do so to do so. Sorry, and also for our audience, right after this short Miro session, we will take your questions. We already saw the questions that we have in the chat and we'll do a final round of questions to the panelists. But yes, if I mean Arnaud, Gabriela, John, or Carrie, if you are inspired by this Miro board and if you want to react to some points, that will be the moment. So I don't know who wants to start.
I can start, Jean, if you like, Gabriela.
Thank you. Thank you. Perfect.
don't ask me exactly where I saw it. I was just kind of looking around, and one thing came to my mind that I think it's important concerning volunteering, that we have to help students, we have to help young people and the institutions where they find themselves to really know what volunteering is and what volunteering isn't. I see some questions there around, job replacement. Young people are increasingly being attracted to one day ad hoc volunteering in sports events or music festivals or these kind of things. Very often they are not educated to know, they don't understand what indicators they have to look for to see if this is really a good quality volunteering opportunity, or if this is something that's rather job replacement. It's very often not clear if they are really being asked to volunteer for something that's not for profit or for profit, if they are being exploited, basically. So I think some guidance for students and young people in general, a kind of checklist to know what is good quality volunteering, and that they can make their volunteering choices based on an understanding of what volunteering really is. Then I think we do a lot also to address something else which I saw in the mirror around apathy, lack of engagement, which I think, the apathy and lack of engagement comes from bad experiences, or it comes from suspicion, or it comes from really a lack of, understanding why you should do something without pay. So I think this kind of education around what good quality volunteering looks like could be very important to help students make good choices and find the right volunteering opportunities for them.
Thank you, Gabriela, for this insight. John, Arnaud, Carrie, if you want to say something, if you want to comment one message that's on the board, it's the moment.
Yes, I haven't actually been able to use the Miro. There was something wrong on my side, but I've seen lots of the ideas now when the screen has been shared. And I'd like to address the topic about lack of motivation and apathy, which I think is a big challenge for us as well. And when I speak to young people, one of the reasons I hear for this is that they never get feedback. They participate in all these consultations, in these dialogues and discussions, and then they never find out what happens. And I fully understand, and I can relate to their frustration, and I can understand how this system contributes to decrease of interest and engagement. But the challenge for us is that the policy process is always so slow that sometimes it can take 5 years before we see a result. And for us to then provide feedback to the young people who participated in that consultation 5 years ago is nearly impossible, because they will have moved on. They will have left their institutions, their organizations. They've gone out into the adult world, basically. So for me, that is one of the biggest challenges, that even when we have a result and when we can show impact, we can't actually reach the people who participated in the consultation to tell them about that. And that is a big challenge. And I think it's something that fuels a spiral of decrease of motivation and an increase of distrust. So for me, that's one of the biggest challenges, and one that I don't have a good solution to. We try and address it by telling the people we are consulting now about the results we had based on consultations 5 years ago, to at least have something to show. But it would be so much more satisfying for me as well if I could go back to the young people that we consulted in, say, 2014, 2015, and say, hey, based on what you said back then, we have youth goals, for example. Or based on what you said then, we have guarantees in place all over Europe when it comes to youth employment. So that, to me, is one of the biggest challenges.
Thank you, Carrie. Now, John and Arnaud, maybe could you react on the suggested solutions? I mean, if it's okay for you, I'm not forcing you to take these topics, but if you want to do so, I will appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I join what has been also said by the other speakers. I think one that resonated quite a bit with me was treat volunteers as such. I think generally it's quite important and as a solution to be very open about what volunteers are, but also what the capacity they have to engage. We can see that also in student representation sometimes when it's a voluntary position that institution or ministries are expecting the world from them, even though all of this is done voluntary next to their studies. So I think that's something quite important. And another one that I liked as well was training for staff in higher education when it comes to volunteering, not only on what volunteer is, but also on how they can support volunteering and how they can also, as teachers, encourage it and bring also the added value that volunteering can have to students. Yes.
Thank you, Arno. John, do you want to react on the Miro? And if John is not here with us, we can continue to the last round of questions, and we can continue with the questions of the audience, if it's fine for all of you. We just had one question by an anonymous participant, very mysterious. Sometimes student volunteers are treated roughly, and we need to treat volunteers as volunteers. They are giving and not getting back, so we should treat them with care. So does one of you want to react on that? I mean, the way volunteers are treated. Maybe Gabriela, you want to say something, but I mean, the question is open to all of you, so.
Yes, I think it was also one of those that I was referring to in my first intervention, that it's also on the side of young people that they have to understand what good quality volunteering should look like. And ideally, they shouldn't put themselves in situations where they are not being appreciated, where they are not being recognized. They should be able to choose the good quality opportunities and be able to identify those opportunities. That doesn't mean, of course, that we shouldn't work also on capacity building with the institutions, with the entities that are offering volunteering, which is maybe not such good quality, and we offer through CV many possibilities, many opportunities for these organizations, these institutions to raise their quality levels. So I invite, I guess it's mostly SU members here, but not only. I mean, if you see instances of things that you consider to be not good quality volunteering, feel free to contact us, and we can always reach out and offer support, offer help, offer guidance in how to make the volunteering better quality and better appreciated. We don't like to talk about volunteering as though, you know, giving something for free and getting nothing back. We know that volunteers get an awful lot back, and you know what the contribution to the common good, the contribution to society that they are making, they also benefit from as volunteers. And of course they also learn skills, they also learn competencies, they also are able to interact with diverse groups of people. So hopefully through volunteering as well, volunteers themselves also appreciate some direct benefits related to themselves, but also related to the causes that they're volunteering for. So if you see these instances of not so good quality, I would really just say, you know, reach out for help, reach out for support, and certainly from our side, we can offer that.
Many thanks, Gabriela, for this answer. We have another question, and actually this question is specifically related to Serbia and what's happening since 6 months there. I mean, related to the students' protests. So the question is, I mean, and the question is from Bojana, actually. The person said, I'm wondering how panelists review and reflect upon students' civic engagement in the context of what is going on in Serbia at this point. Their 6 months long protests encapsulate everything that has been said so far, and the literature on participating in student protests reflect the power of students' protest as a liminal and transformative experience that's boosting their knowledge and competences. So if one of you would like to say something about what's happening in Serbia related to student civic engagement.
Maybe I can start. I mean, as said earlier, I think Serbia is a great example of students and the student movement being at the forefront of change, not only within higher education, but within society as a whole. So I think it's quite interesting, and it's also quite good reflection on seeing that generally people are afraid of students and are afraid of the student movement and of what the student movement can do. We can also see it on how these protests are being repressed. And then when it comes to the reaction, I mean, yeah, it's been 6 months now, and nothing much has happened. And I think it's also quite problematic. And I mean, now it's been 10 days that they have finished to their run from Serbia to Brussels, and it's always a bit the more frustrating part is that students, even when they're doing peaceful protests and showing their unhappiness, there is no real reaction, and nothing has really come from the European Commission on this. So it's I think that's a bit the more annoying part.
Many thanks, Arnaud. And now to continue and to slowly conclude this webinar, I mean, I will ask the four of you if we can give us like one takeaway from this webinar and about the topic. So if you wish to add something on the topic on student civic engagement, it's the moment. And after that, we will slowly conclude the webinar. So I don't know who wants to start. I don't know if John is back, but maybe we can start with Carrie.
Thank you very much for giving me the word again. As always, when I've spoken about youth engagement and heard people speaking about youth engagement, I always leave with a sense of enthusiasm and optimism and hope, because what I do see is that there is so much passion for this, and so many people who believe that this is a very important topic, and so many people who are working together to make youth engagement better and more inclusive. So that is, again, my takeaway from this, that I always feel strengthened in my work from having so much input and from seeing so many people feeling strongly about this topic. So I'm grateful for that and grateful for the opportunity to be here and to take part today.
Thank you. Maybe Arnaud?
Yeah, I think my takeaway would be that there is still a long road to get to meaningful student engagement, but that we're slowly getting there, and it's, yeah, I would finish with that.
Thank you, Arnaud. Gabriela?
I think we have to remember that we have to do it together. And these kind of projects, cross-sectoral collaboration, shared understanding, a shared journey in this process are really, really essential.
Thank you. I don't know if John is back, but John, if you can hear me, if you wish to add something, and if not, Jon, you can also take over for the last part of the webinar. But just I want to thank the four of you for participating in this panel discussion, and we will continue to the last and final word. And I think, Jörn, you're in charge of it.
Yes, thank you very much. Also from my side, a huge thank you to all the 4 panelists that you took the time to, speak about student civic engagement and sharing your insights and your ideas was very valuable. And also, thank you to all the people that were attending this webinar. And for the last part, we will just have a look at the next steps, just that you are aware what is going on. We also have a website where you can always be up to date on the things we are doing. So basically, we are working more on finalize the framework. We are working on the ambassador scheme that we also want to take into practice. As we already mentioned, this was today the first webinar of 5 webinars in total. So the next webinar will be around September, 5 webinars in total. We are developing a lot of learning materials, also a toolkit for service learning, and of course we're also conducting some workshops. So if you're in general interested in helping us in the project or share insights, share more ideas or best practice you have, feel free to reach out and get into contact with us. So final words, I would say, thank you for your attention. And I think we all saw that there's a lot of things to do and that we share a common idea of student engagement and we all working together on this. And we will see what the future brings. And before I give over to Jeanne again, I think we have a feedback form. We all would be very pleased if you could scan the QR code and fill in the feedback form.
The feedback form will also be sent after the webinar, so no worries. If you don't catch it right now, we will send it to you. But many thanks, Jörn, for the presentation, and to everyone, so our 4 panelists, the audience, Nick for dealing with the techniques, the Miro and everything. And just before we conclude, do not hesitate to keep an eye to the project website. The link is in the chat. And here you will be updated with everything happening on the project. Also, just to let you know, we'll use all of the Miro inputs so for our work about the project. So many thanks for that, for your engagement, for your participation. We really appreciate it. And since it's the first webinar we are doing for the project, we didn't know what to expect, but we were really glad that you were, so many of you attended the webinar. So thank you very much. And again, the recording will be uploaded on the project website. So if you want to share the link of the project website, if you want to talk about EngageAll to people that might be interested, do not hesitate. And I think I don't have much to say, but just thank you very much. And if you have any questions regarding to the projects, you can also contact every partners of the project